sleeping in a motel in Brewer, Maine one night. I woke up with terrible hay fever and my eyes were burning, and I looked out at the river and there were great mounds of white foam going right down the river. And the next morning I got up and I said, my God, what was that happening last night? He said, oh, that's just the river. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, look, every night the paper companies send the stuff down the river. I said, what are you talking about? And he said, don't you understand? That's how we get rid of the effluent from the paper mills. Well, I knew at that time. I'd been in a business. I'd sold oil to the paper mills. I knew all the owners. I'd been in politics. I knew the people in the towns. I knew not one constituent of the paper mills wanted to have the river polluted. And yet here the river was being polluted. And it was more or less as if we created a doom machine. In our search for wealth and for prosperity, we created something that was going to destroy us.
The traders who are involved in the market are not guys whose moral fiber when it comes to environmental conditions are going to be rattled at all. They're seeing dollars and they're making money. Brokers don't stay away from copper because it violates their religious beliefs or their environmental policies. No. When you think about it, but it's fleeting. It really is a fleeting moment. It's like, you know, yeah, oh yeah, well, the town's being polluted down there in Peru, but hey, this guy needs to buy some copper. I'm getting paid a commission too. Our information that we receive does not include anything about the environmental conditions. Because until the environmental conditions become a commodity themselves or are being traded, then obviously we will not have anything to do with that. It doesn't come into our psyche at all. You know, it's so far away and you hardly hear anything about it. I mean, keep in mind, I mean, there are things going on right in our backyards, for God's sake. We trade live hogs. I mean, there's so many pigs in the state of Carolina that is polluting the rivers, but how often do you find out about that?
At Multinational Monitor, we put together a list of the top corporate criminals of the 1990s. We went back and looked at all of the criminal fines that corporations had paid in the decade. Exxon pled guilty in connection to federal criminal charges with the Valdez spill and paid $125 million in criminal fines. General Electric was guilty of defrauding the federal government and paid $9.5 million in criminal fines. Chevron was guilty of environmental violations and paid $6.5 million in fines. Mitsubishi was guilty of antitrust violations and paid $1.8 million in fines. IBM was guilty of illegal exports and paid $8.5 million. Was guilty of environmental violations. Pfizer, the drug manufacturer, was guilty of antitrust violations and paid $20 million of food and drug regulatory violations. Sears was guilty of financial fraud. Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois. Unical was guilty of fraud, environmental violations. Korean Airlines paid finance violations. It paid $255 million. Hoffman LaRouche, guilty of an antitrust violation, paid $500 million in criminal fines.
Again and again, we have the problem that whether you obey the law or not is a matter of whether it's cost effective. If the chance of getting caught and the penalty are less than it costs to comply, people think of it as being just a business decision.
Drawing the metaphor of the early attempts to fly. The man going off of a very high cliff in his airplane with the wings flapping and the guy is flapping the wings and the wind is in his face and this poor fool thinks he's flying, but in fact he's in free fall and he just doesn't know it yet because the ground is so far away. But of course the craft is doomed to crash. That's the way our civilization is. The very high cliff represents the virtually unlimited resources we seem to have when we began this journey. The craft isn't flying because it's not built according to the laws of aerodynamics, and it's subject to the law of gravity. Our civilization is not flying because it's not built according to the laws of aerodynamics for civilizations that would fly. And of course, the ground is still a long way away, but some people have seen that ground rushing up sooner than the rest of us have. The visionaries have seen it and have told us it's coming. There's not a single scientific peer-reviewed paper published in the last 25 years that would contradict this scenario. Every living system of Earth is in decline. Every life support system of Earth is in decline. And these together constitute the biosphere that supports and nurtures all of life, and not just our life, but perhaps 30 million other species that share this planet with us. The typical company of the 20th century, extractive, wasteful, abusive, linear in all of its processes, taking from the earth, making, wasting, sending its products back to the biosphere, waste to a landfill. I myself was amazed to learn just how much stuff the earth has to produce through our extraction process to produce $1 of revenue for our company. When I learned, I was flabbergasted. We're leaving a terrible legacy of poison and diminishment of the environment for our grandchildren's grandchildren, generations not yet born. Some people have called that intergenerational tyranny, a form of taxation without representation levied by us on generations yet to be. It's the wrong thing to do.